We're actually going to completely skip the usual pleasantries today because we need to jump straight into one of the most heavily guarded, honestly mind-boggling secrets in US Navy history. We're investigating a mystery that isn't floating around in outer space, but is buried literally 7 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, let's just start by wrapping our heads around a truly terrifying number, 36,089. That is the depth in feet of Challenger Deep down in the Mariana Trench. We're talking about an alien environment that is entirely cut off from sunlight. It's the absolute deepest point on the surface of our planet.
To really grasp the unbelievable scale of a drop like that, think about it this way. If you were to take Mount Everest, the tallest peak on Earth, and drop it straight down into the Mariana Trench, the summit wouldn't even poke out of the water. Actually, it wouldn't even be close. The top of Everest would still be submerged under more than a mile of ocean. It's just an incomprehensible chasm.
But, depth is really only half the story. We've got to talk about the pressure down there, which sits at a bone-crushing 1,086 times our normal atmospheric pressure. To put that into everyday terms, imagine taking 50 jumbo jets and stacking them directly on top of a single human body. That's what it feels like. For the longest time, science assumed that these kinds of conditions made it absolutely 100% impossible for complex life to exist.
Which brings us to Operation Necton and the descent.
So, in January of 1960, humanity finally attempts to touch the bottom. The US Navy sends 2 guys, Lieutenant Don Walsh and a Swiss engineer named Jacques Piccard, into this pitch-black void inside a specialized bathyscaphe called the Trieste. And the claustrophobic terror of this timeline is just wild. The descent took almost 5 hours. But right before they hit the sea floor at about 35,800 feet, they suddenly hear this sharp, massive implosion sound. A window had cracked under the immense weight of the ocean. For several agonizing minutes in total darkness, they had absolutely no idea if their vessel was about to cave in.
Thankfully, it helped, but it really makes you ask, why even take a risk like that? Well, while the public was fed the story that Operation Necton was purely for science and testing diving tech, declassified FOIA documents tell a completely different story. The Navy was actually down there actively evaluating the trench for highly classified military uses. They were trying to figure out if trenches like this could be used for hiding weapons, routing communication cables, or even sheltering submarines during a global conflict.
Let's move on to the classified transmission.
Now, the most critical moment of this entire mission happened the exact minute they touched the bottom, and Walsh picked up the acoustic telephone to call the surface crew. And there's a massive, glaring contradiction in what happens next. The official Navy history, the one approved for the public, claims Walsh saw a single 1-foot flatfish, just a little flounder. But the declassified acoustic logs, which were heavily distorted by 7 miles of water, tell us something else. The surface crew logged Walsh describing significant biological activity down there, including multiple creatures. That completely blew existing marine biology out of the water.
But here's the thing. Buried in that declassified log was one specific, incredibly chilling observation written down by the surface crew officer, Lieutenant Commander James Everly. He transcribed 3 short words: large, unidentified, moving away from vessel. And if you look at the original file, the word large isn't just written, it's distinctly handwritten and heavily underlined by the officer.
And you can tell that decades later, the weight of that exact log entry was still a massive secret. In a 1989 Naval History interview, they asked Lieutenant Commander Everly directly about that specific acoustic transmission. On the tape, Everly just goes dead silent. He pauses for 11 full seconds. Look, 11 seconds of dead air in an interview is a lifetime. And only after that painfully long pause does he nervously steer the conversation right back to the safe, official flatfish story.
That brings us to acoustic ocean anomalies.
The Trieste was only at the bottom for about 20 minutes before heading back up. And crazy enough, no human would return down there for another 52 years. But don't think for a second the Navy stopped paying attention. Over the next 5 decades, they rolled out these unbelievably sophisticated, highly classified acoustic monitoring programs. We're talking Project Caesar, Project Jezebel, and the SOSUS network, which is basically a massive web of underwater microphones. Now, officially, these were to track Soviet subs, sure, but they ended up picking up something else entirely from the depths of the Mariana.
For 40 solid years, a clear pattern of classified anomalies just kept emerging from that trench. From 1960 to 2000, SOUS recorded sound after sound that didn't match any known earthquakes or whales or anything, and it all peaked in 1997 with a massive acoustic event.
NOAA researchers who got a look at the data noted it had totally clear biological characteristics. But then, mysteriously, that exact event was logged, reported, and then completely scrubbed from all public scientific literature. Poof, gone.
So let's talk about the 2012 Challenger dive.
The silence in the public record wasn't really broken until March of 2012. That's when filmmaker James Cameron became the first human to finally go back down, doing a solo dive in the deep sea Challenger. And the tech difference between these two trips is huge. In 1960, they had 20 minutes of basically blind sitting in the dark. Cameron had 3 full hours, he had HD cameras, live data feeds, scientific samplers, the whole shebang. But his public account? He said it was just a flat, desolate, completely barren wasteland.
But hold on, because when he was really pressed during an interview in 2013 about whether he saw anything unexpected down in the dark, Cameron gave this super calculated, ambiguous answer. He just said the environment was, quote, "not what I expected in some ways," and he refused to elaborate further.
And to back that up, his peer-reviewed scientific papers prove that there's nothing down there except basic microbial life and some tiny little crustaceans. Absolutely zero match to the massive, significant biological activity from the 1960 classified log. Which means whatever Lieutenant Walsh saw back then was either the biggest mistake in naval history, it physically packed up and moved, or the truth is still being actively covered up, leaving us with an unsolved, classified mystery.
Because all of these contradictions force us to ask a really uncomfortable question. What is the US Navy actually doing in the Mariana Trench today? Because they definitely haven't packed up and left. Declassified budgets show they have a heavily funded, super active presence down there. They're using unmanned deep-sea rovers and next-gen acoustics that make the old SOS-SUS network look like a toy. And their official excuse for 60 straight years of classified surveillance? Just 2 vague words: strategic awareness.
You know what's genuinely staggering? We literally have better, more detailed, high-resolution maps of the surface of Mars, a planet millions and millions of miles away, than we do of the ocean floor sitting right under American naval jurisdiction. We've mapped the moon, guys, but our own trench is still just a classified black box.
Which drags us right back to those terrifying, heavily underlined words scribbled in the dark under the weight of 7 miles of ocean water. Large, unidentified, moving away from vessel.
Just really think about the biological implications there. Whatever that thing was, its movement proves it had the awareness to actually react to the Trieste dropping in. If it moved away, it knew the vessel was there. Which leaves us with one unforgettable question to close this explainer. What exactly has the United States Navy been monitoring at the bottom of our world for the last 60 years?